Hey there, I am Christie Ruffino, former broke single mom turned CEO of 2 six-figure businesses and best-selling author with 15 books. But it wasn't always like this. Not long ago, I was a hot mess. Yes, I did a lot of things right, but mostly I was throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what would stick. Fast forward past many failed attempts and a few incredible victories, I not only get to share what I've learned along the way, I get to bring together top influencers as they share their empowering stories, insider secrets, and valuable resources that can be used right now to step into your power. So, if you're an ambitious entrepreneur, or possibly one in the making, and you're looking to create a business and life that lights you up, well, then you're in the right place. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to today's show. I am Christie Ruffino, the host of the Mastery Unleashed podcast, and I have a great guest for you today. Now, you may be here the first time, or you may be a long-time listener. Either way, I want to give you a quick recap of what is going to be happening, how we got started, and where we are today. And right now, you are listening to one episode in a series. And I started this podcast a few years ago, and it used to be called Overcoming Mediocrity. And I called it that because I started a series of books called Overcoming Mediocrity. And in those books, I was able to feature a collection of women who had amazing stories. That was back in, 2013, I think, was the first year we had our book out. So no, it was longer than 2012. Either way, I started this podcast so I could give those women an additional voice. Yes, I loved being able to share their stories in a book, but I wanted them to be able to get their message out to more people. So I thought, what the heck, let's start a podcast. And it's been amazing, because not only have I been able to feature the stories of those women, but I've been able to attract a bunch of amazing guests as well who want to share their stories and their strategies. And right now, we are in the middle of a specific series at the launch of our 12th book, Overcoming Mediocrity, Epic Women. And we did a couple group shows, and now I have the pleasure of interviewing the individual women who want to and are brave enough to share their stories on our podcast. And today is an episode that I personally feel very connected about. Our guest is Liz Orvis, and she is going to be talking about the dilemma of mental illness in our society. And Liz she's just incredible, because she has achieved a ton in her life, from her career, her education. She is a former special education teacher, which, that doesn't just happen. You have to go to schooling for that. She's also a Board Certified Behavior Analyst. And she now is working as a contractor with the state of Michigan to make changes in the mental health field. One of those projects she's working on is to develop crisis stabilization units in the state. And it is just amazing what she is able to do, not only because she has a passion for it, but because she is a person that struggles almost daily on her journey with her own mental illness. She is such an inspiration. She's a little spitfire, but she does have ups and downs like we all do, but her downs are pretty big and her ups are also pretty big. So she's on this massive roller coaster ride. However, she's also on a bigger mission, and having that mission is what fuels her fire to continue to get out there and make an impact in this particular field. So I'm going to quit babbling, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the show over so you can get to know Liz, and more importantly, learn about what's going on in this, in the mental health world, right? Because there's a crisis right now. And I think it was always there, but I believe with where we are in the world, we can do more and we could step it up more to be able to help the people who are suffering. So let's get on with the show and you can meet Liz and see how incredible she is. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode. I am Christie, and I'm excited to have Liz Orvis on the show today. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much, Christy. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, I am really, I'm glad that you wanted to be on the show because I am not as passionate, but I am very passionate about this topic. And I really believe that there's an epidemic in our society and something that I think if we build more awareness around, maybe we could get some additional resources and support in this area. And I love what you're doing because I've heard just in the, few months that we've known each other, I've seen the impact you're making around this topic. And I'm just so proud of you, right? You're pushing through you're battling your own obstacles and you're making a huge difference in the world.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm sure you're all wondering what this topic is, but I am going to let Liz share her story and what we're going to be talking about today. And you're going to be just as impressed as I am with this woman. So Liz, share your story.
Okay, thank you. So my main topic is mental health awareness and decreasing the disparity in the mental health field, which really means that all people, regardless of the type of insurance they have, regardless of where they are in the world, receive equal care. And for me, it started just when I was little. I was a gifted and talented kid. I was the president of the choir department, the captain of the swim team. I just had everything going for me. And I went to school to be a special education teacher. I had wanted to do that my whole life. And I graduated with a great GPA. I got a job right out of school. And it was amazing until about my second or third year of teaching. And all of a sudden, I just crashed. And we didn't even know what was going on. But soon after that, I was diagnosed with severe bipolar and OCD. And it turns out that I had just been overcoming all these years of my life, and we just didn't know how hard I was working just to stay at the top of the pile. And so soon after that, it felt like I lost everything. I lost my volunteer jobs. I lost my career. I lost the ability to be as independent as I wanted to. And I really thought that my life was over. I thought this was as good as it was going to get. And it was devastating. But the thing about getting knocked down is that you get back up again. And so I started working really hard. I learned a lot of coping skills. I got my medication more stable. And suddenly, I was like, maybe I could get a master's. And so I went back to school and got my master's in applied behavior analysis, working with kids with autism. And once again, I was thriving. I was doing everything I loved. I was very good at my job and I was so happy. And then I crashed again. And I discovered that working full time is not something I can do. It's just not in the cards. And so I had to kind of rethink my life and just change my dreams, change it to things that I could do instead of things that I just wanted to do. And once again, I just felt like this disease had crippled me and I wasn't sure that I could get back up again. Um, but then I discovered that I could. And so I got to the point where I had been hospitalized so many times that I started to realize, depending on the type of insurance you have, that's the type of quality care you get. So if you have independent insurance that pays a lot more, you get great, wonderful services, healthy food, opportunities to exercise, um, just like great care. And if you don't, when I got to the point that I had lower, like, state-sponsored insurance, all of a sudden I discovered how horrible it could be. The staff is more neglectful, the food is inedible and unhealthy, and it's just a terrible experience. And once again, I was at the point where I thought, "I just can't do this anymore." And then I got a purpose. I thought, I can change the world. I am smart, I am eloquent, and I have a disability. And so that's when I started my blog and started writing and really started um, making efforts to change the world. So, um, yeah, that was just a little over a year ago. Since that time, I was able to write the chapter in Overcoming Mediocrity, which was an amazing experience. And I also have a blog that is thriving, and I'm in the process of editing my memoir, which teaches people how to thrive with a mental illness, to realize that that kind of diagnosis is not the end of the world. It's really just the beginning. And what is amazing is it has opened so many doors. I'm now, if you're familiar with 988, the new national suicide hotline,
Oh, I didn't know
I
that.
had,
Okay.
yes, I had great experience with them, and they made me a stakeholder, and that was so cool. And I got a job with the state, creating crisis stabilization units, which will really change the face of mental health services across the state and hopefully eventually across the country. And just yesterday, when I was networking at an event for that job, someone who is on the board of trustees for NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, really wanted me to join in that and see how I could assist. So
Wow.
what, I thought my life was over, and it is just beginning. It's just realizing that my dreams are different now than what I thought they were going to be.
Yes. Wow. Uh, yeah. So I personally have a situation in my family where I deal with this. And it was people that don't deal personally with mental illness, either with themselves or with somebody they love. They don't understand how complex this issue is. It happens like yours, just out of nowhere. It could really happen at any time in your life. Typically with males, it tends to, gosh, this has been a while since I learned this. You probably know better than me, but males, it tends to come on later than females.
Right.
Like
Really, most people don't get a diagnosis till their mid-20s at the
yes.
earliest,
Hmm.
which that doesn't mean they haven't had a mental illness their whole life. It just means that they've been coping. And
Yes.
all of a sudden, you get into the working world and you're no longer able to cope as well. But it also comes down to the stigma.
Well,
People are
that's it.
embarrassed.
People
Yeah,
think that this is like this shameful problem. And because back in the day, what did they do? Anybody with a mental illness, they would lock up in a loony bin. However,
absolutely.
this is really no different than any other disease that we get. It's our body acting in a way that it shouldn't. And with a mental illness, it's our brain. I mean, our brains are so
Mhm.
complex. And we need our brains to make decisions and to survive and to use logic. If you have cancer, if you have diabetes, I mean, you're still able to use your brain to make decisions. Where if you have a mental illness, sometimes, you have good periods and bad periods, and it's really hard to navigate the world when you're going through a difficult time. And yeah, it's really difficult because people don't ask for this, but they have to navigate the challenges of it. And when you can't work, which typically if you have it bad enough, or if you have it where they can't get the medications dialed in, because there's not like a one size fits all
Right.
prescription, right? It's a cocktail for every single person. So the doctors are doing their best they can to figure it out. In the meantime, that person probably can't work. And the fact that they can't work, that means they don't have the good insurance that they may have had at one time. And then now they're in this situation where not only are they trying to get healthier, but they're being put in an environment while they're supposed to get healthier that actually does the opposite. Because we all know nutrition is a big part of our body working correctly. And if you're getting food that's just subpar, that's not going to help somebody get better. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's a mess. I've been navigating this journey for, oh gosh, I don't know, at least 10 years, 10, 15 years. And it's difficult.
Well, and something you said, that, it's not a straightforward journey. There are so many of my good meaning friends and family who will say like, "Oh, you're doing so well, you're cured." And unfortunately, that's not how it works. Bipolar is a cyclical illness. So there are times when I'm doing great and I can conquer the world, and then there are other times when I can't get out of bed for a week. And
Yes.
just knowing that's going to be my life, and I have to kind of schedule accordingly, and I have to be honest with my employers, with my volunteer teams, just tell them that I can't promise you that I can work every day for the next 10 years. I have to kind of listen to my body and do what I can.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Liz, for sharing your story. And what I want to do is take a quick break because I know there's a lot of information you want to share with the audience, and I can't wait to get back and dive into that. So,
That sounds great.
hang tight, everybody. We'll be right back. And thank you, Liz. You know what I learned about story? No matter how confident you are or how scared you are about sharing your story, you're never going to realize the power your story has on others until you share it. Hi, my name is Christie Ruffino, and I've been helping women and a few men share their stories for almost 12 years. And what I'm so excited about is now I've taken my proven formula and combined it with AI, and I have a workshop coming up in just a few weeks that's going to walk you step by step to writing your signature story. So whether you just want to share your story to leave a bigger legacy in the world, or you want to leverage it to build your business brand, attract your ideal clients, and use it as your powerful message in the world, join me for my story writing workshop, where I am going to really, it's a hands-on 4-hour experience where you're going to walk away with your story written. As long as you bring your computer, an open mind, and a dedication to getting your story out in the world, we're going to make it happen. Just go to activatemystory.com to get your tickets today. Welcome back, everybody. This is Christie and Liz Orvis, and we're continuing our conversation around the stigma, the challenge, and the journey of mental illness. And I mentioned earlier how back in the day, they would just lock people up and basically throw away the key. And things are a lot different now. However, I believe we have a long way to go. And I only know a fraction. And I know you know a lot of more in-depth history around this situation. So can you kind of share a little bit about what you've experienced in that progress?
Absolutely. So one thing that is fascinating that I love to talk about is in somewhere around 1870, 1880, there was this amazing investigative journalist right at the beginning of that type of work, named Nellie Bly, who got herself locked in um, an institution, even though she didn't have a mental illness. And she just took notes and studied. And it was horrifying. There were people there who were locked up, even though it was called an insane asylum back then.
Yes,
And there were
yes.
people who were sane that just their husbands didn't want them. And so they had them admitted, or their family just gave up on them and they had them admitted. And you were not locked up for 2 to 3 weeks like you might be now. You were locked up for life. And the nurses and the doctors were so abusive, and the food was rotten and even sometimes had spiders in it and just unsafe. And it meant you might be just sitting on benches for the whole day, no structured activities, nothing to do. And we have come so far. Now hospitals, even if they don't have good, healthy food, at least it's not rotten. And, instead of just sitting on benches, the days are full of coping skills, full of support. The doctors are kind and understanding. It really has come a long way, but unfortunately, it hasn't come that far everywhere. And I was in a hospital that was very low income, where the staff was neglectful, the food was unhealthy, there were very few coping skills groups, and it just made me realize, like, we have come so far since the late 1800s, but we just have so far to go. And that's really where the crisis stabilization units come in. Instead of being hospitalized for 2 to 3 weeks, you can come in for 2 to 3 days, just work through the crisis, get supports, get family supports, get counseling, get a doctor set up, and just get what you need, and then go back home. And it really is the hope of the future of mental health support.
Yeah. I remember just recently when you were invited to be a part of this project. And you had kind of talked about it a little bit, how there was just the one. And I'm like, oh, that would be great if they were all over the world. And then a couple weeks later, you talked about how you got invited to be in this project where they're planning to have them all over the world. So to me, I just think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, actually, they're only in a couple of states right now. It's really just like a beginning project.
Like a
But
beta.
I'm
Yeah.
in Michigan and we're going to have 16 within the next year. And that's just
Wow.
incredible. It's just such an amazing opportunity. Um, and I'm so glad to be a part of it right from the ground floor up. So
Yeah. Wow. So is this, there has to be funding for something like this. So is this state funded? Is it something that, a donor provided? I mean, how does politics work into all of this, into making these changes?
Well, that's a great question. When I first started fighting, I contacted so many politicians, and they said, we won't start a bill unless there has been that one that was successful somewhere else. And nobody wanted to be the first. And that was devastating to me because I thought, like, somebody has to take a chance on us. But then this happened, and it is partially federally funded and partially state funded. But what is amazing about it is, um, anybody can receive the services, whether you have private insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, or no insurance. They're taking everybody. And I was talking to them about equality. I said, please remember that equality does not mean giving each CSU the same amount of money. It means giving the people the same quality of services. So if places that primarily have Medicaid patients need more funding than places that are primarily um, privately funded, then they're going to do that. They're going to make the disparity decrease so much. And it's really amazing.
Mm, I love that. I love that. So I know, well, before we dive into the next, is there anything else you want to say about how politics plays into all this, or maybe, because I know you want to share some coping skills and some resources, but I don't want to go there yet because I really want to have an opportunity to inform our audience how they can get involved, or how they can make a difference in this change.
Absolutely. So, anytime you find yourself with an extra 10 minutes, you can write a letter to your congressman, to the governor. I even wrote a letter to the president one time and actually got a response back. And, the more people that stand up and say this is an issue, the more likely they are to do something about it because, politicians have to think about their voting base. And so they're hesitant to try something if they don't know if there are enough people following it. And, that's what my book is aimed at. My memoir is aimed at. I wrote it to support people who are like me and to support people who have a family member, but also to inform people who just don't know about mental illness to get a really good understanding of what is involved and how you can help. So um I would just encourage people write a note. And it is making a difference. The governor in our state, upon hearing um, that this was an issue, increased the funding by $1 million.
Oh,
So it
wow.
really is possible to make a difference. You just have to take the time and make your voice heard.
Mm, that's really good. Yeah, sometimes we think that our voice isn't loud enough, and why would we waste the time if no one's going to hear us? But if enough of us do stand up and get involved and share our viewpoint and our desires on the topic, then yeah, eventually the politicians they're going to have to listen, right? They want to keep getting the
Exactly.
vote, so they're
Yeah.
going to have to listen. All right, so skills. What are some of the skills that you learned so you can navigate the ups and downs?
Yeah, I think it's so important to just have some coping skills because I know a lot of people think, oh, mental illness, they're going to get medicated. And the medication really does help, but all it does is get you to the point where you can use coping skills. And so I just want to mention three of the coping skills that have really helped me the most. Um, the first one is what we call the 3-day rule, which is when you're in crisis, that you tell yourself, I'm not going to do anything to harm myself, to harm anyone else for 3 days. I'm just going to sit with it. It's just a promise. And that doesn't mean you don't do anything. You get extra supports, you use your other coping skills, but you make a promise that for 3 days, you're just going to sit on it. And it's amazing how much better you can feel in 3 days. It's a way to avoid the hospital. It's a way to avoid a medicine change. It's just a way to kind of let your body chill out and do the things you need. And then another one, I struggle with my brain lying to me, and that's very common in
Absolutely.
people with mental illness. Yeah. So one of my best skills is checking the facts, which means that when my brain tells me something, and maybe it feels a little funny, or maybe it doesn't even, I run it by a couple of my closest friends. I say, this is what I'm thinking. Is that rational? Is that true? And most of the time they tell me no and they help me reframe it. And sometimes they tell me, like, yeah, that's accurate. But it really helps to not, to just perseverate, to be stuck on these thoughts that just aren't true. So that really helps. And then the third one is just personal affirmations. It is so easy to put yourself down, to think, I'm not as good as people who are able to work full time. I'm not as good as my family members. And just to remember to tell yourself, like, I am good enough, or I can do amazing things, or, I won't give up. Just fill your mind, write them down, read them, post them on your walls. Just the idea that, you can do hard things. You just have to remember.
Yeah. I like your second point, and I think that that's a point that we all should utilize, because I have like a little sticker here on my computer monitor that says feelings are not facts.
Yes.
Because sometimes we start feeling something and then our mind will bring in other things that will
Right.
reinforce those feelings, even though they're not necessarily facts. There may be our perceived facts, but if we
Right.
do reach out to somebody else and ask for them to help ground us, gosh, that would save us all a lot of challenges.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I know myself, more so in the past. As we get older, we get a little wiser, right? We try. We like to think, or at least I like to think I'm a little wiser now. But I remember in the past just going off deep ends about certain things because emotionally I was challenged, and then I brought all these other stories and I played these stories into my head that weren't necessarily true, and then it sent me spiraling down. So I love that second tip, and I think we all should utilize
Yeah.
that skill. So one more couple more questions, and I know you have some resources you want to share. Can you enlighten the audience a little bit about what bipolar is? I know there's a lot of diagnoses out there, and I know maybe you could speak on a couple of them, but you can definitely speak on this because you are an expert. And
Sure.
from my experience, this is not what I deal with. I deal with schizophrenia in my family, but with bipolar, I was with somebody at once that was diagnosed bipolar. And I think sometimes people think it's just mood swings, but it's more than mood swings. So can you share a little bit of information around what bipolar is?
Sure. So, it's interesting that you say mood swings, because it's kind of like mood swings on steroids. So when I have downs, it's, I'm not able to keep up with personal hygiene. I'm not able to keep up with daily living skills. My house gets a mess, having trouble cooking. I might have to order DoorDash more often. I may not even eat. I'm not able to get out of bed as well. It's more than just feeling sad. It's when it's strangling you. You just can't cope, and I cry all the time, and that's when I'm more likely to have suicidal or self-harm thoughts. And then manias are absolutely the opposite. And sometimes they feel good, especially at the beginning. I feel so excited. And it's like such a relief from the depression. But unfortunately, it doesn't stay like that. You have many issues. You don't sleep for days at a time sometimes. And then you spend a lot of money. Like, that's one of our key signs that I'm going into mania, when the Amazon packages start arriving 3 or 4 every day, and you talk really fast. It's called pressured speech, where you talk fast and intensely, and your you have flight of ideas, it's called,
Yes.
where you're talking about one thing and then you're talking,
Yeah.
like, I might be talking about what I did for the day, and all of a sudden I'm talking about soup, and it's just
In your
people.
mind, it makes sense, but we're like, what? What are they talking
Exactly.
about? Right.
Yeah, and the problem with mania is you can get delusions, and mine are often like, I feel like I have to light my car on fire, or I have to light other things on fire, or I have to drive to see the Statue of Liberty. And so we have rules. We have specific rules that I'm not allowed to light anything on fire. I'm not allowed to, like, strip anywhere. I'm not allowed to drive to the Statue of Liberty. And those are just like to help me cope, to keep me
Ah,
safe. And my family will sometimes take my keys, or they will, have me go to my mom's house to stay just to keep me safe. And, it
yeah,
sounds really fun at first, but isn't. And
yeah.
then in between is what we call rapid cycling. And that's when you have depression and then mania, and then depression and then mania. And instead of it being spread out um, for long periods of time, it happens so fast. Sometimes it's like
Like
a day at a
whiplash.
time, and
Yeah.
my family cannot figure out, like, what to do. You never know whether I'm going to be sobbing or, cracking up hysterically. It just goes so fast, and it's very confusing and very stressful.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't want to get into the rule about taking your clothes off because I'm sure there's
Yeah,
stories around that.
there sure are.
Oh my gosh. So let's talk about resources. I know
Yeah,
I'm very familiar with NAMI. You mentioned that earlier, and I think it's an international or at least a national
it is, yep.
organization. And I know where I lived before, there's chapters for family members.
Yep.
There's the resources. We took classes. We took a 13-week class just to be able to, as a family, understand what was going on, not only with the person, but with the industry, with the medication, with the doctor, like everything. It's so complex. And NAMI was a lifesaver for us to just be able to navigate our journey. And I know there are so many other resources. So what other resources can you share?
Yeah, here's just a few. Community mental health is an
Mm,
option anywhere in the United States. And a common misconception is that you can only go to community mental health if you have Medicaid, and they do provide more comprehensive services to people with Medicaid for free. But also, anybody can go there and just get referrals and get some ideas and get started. So that's a great place to start. There's also a service called Clubhouses, which is an international program where you can go to basically work. They call it the work order day. And it's for people that have serious mental illness, can't work, are on disability. And you go there and just do structured activities, because just getting out of the house and doing something meaningful can make you feel so much better. And
mm,
then, of course, 988, the number that you can call if you're in crisis. You can actually call or text. They give you both options. It is anonymous, so you don't have to worry about, giving up your identity, worrying about the stigma. And they'll just help you talk through a crisis and see if they can help you calm down enough that you don't need the hospital. But of course, if you are ever in an emergency, if you're unsafe, if you feel like someone else is unsafe because of you, always go to the emergency room and get the help that you need.
that is so good. Just to kind of wrap this up, my mom also faced severe depression, and I really did not know the extent of what she dealt with until after she passed away. So she passed away in 2020. And eh, our family was fortunate that she kept journals. And so at one point she saw a therapist, and that's what they encouraged her to do, is write during some of this. And, this she dealt with this years and years and years ago, and things were way different back then. But reading those journals, I really learned a lot about what she was hiding and what she was feeling, and just the challenges that she faced and the resources that she tapped into that our family didn't really know. She kept it secret from us. So the reason why I bring this up is I actually just had a book published for her, and I included NAMI as one of the resources. Um, and I will put all of the resources that Liz mentioned in the show notes. But I just want people to be aware, you may have a family member that is struggling,
Right.
and they're afraid. And maybe, obviously they're not struggling as bad as what Liz described, because then you would know, but they could have minor symptoms, and there's things that we could help. They could get better
Absolutely.
help if they would be more transparent about that. And so just be aware of the people you love. And sometimes it's okay to just ask people how they are. And is there anything I can do to help you or have meaningful conversations with them? Don't just take our family members for granted. Because
And I will like to add, if you're interested in this topic, please check out my chapter in Overcoming Mediocrity, Epic
absolutely.
Women. It's a really good introduction. But if you read it and then want to know more, my memoir that talks all about pretty much every topic in the mental health field, It's a Hard Knock Life, is going to be coming out in January 2024. So once you read the Overcoming Mediocrity book, if you're just like, man, I wish I could know more, that's where you want to turn. So
Yes. So we will have so Liz is giving a free chapter of that book as her
I
free
am.
gift. Yeah. So you'll be able to get access to that in the show notes as well as all these other resources that Liz talked about. So I want to thank everybody for listening in and staying with us the whole time. I know for me, I was really excited to be able to have this conversation with Liz, and I hope you found it very helpful for you and enlightening. And of course, Liz, I want to thank you for being transparent.
Thank you so much. It was really an honor to be able to tell my story.
Yes, thank you. Everybody, I appreciate you for showing our show support. If you learned anything from Liz today, or if you felt inspired, maybe you just thought of one person that popped into your mind that you're like, you heard the conversation and that person just like, you thought of them. That happened for a reason. So I encourage you to reach out to that person, do what you can to support them. Just be aware of how challenging life can be. And it's even more challenging when we have our chemicals in our head that aren't working the way they should. So just be more conscious of that. And of course, keep showing love to our show, because the more support we get from our listeners, the better chance we have of sustaining and bringing on more guests like Liz. So thanks everybody for tuning in. And of course, thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Mastery Unleashed podcast, where we believe that everyone can have the business and life of their dreams by turning their mess into their greatest message and following their purpose to help the people who need their newfound wisdom and resources. To learn more, visit masteryunleashedpodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review to this show.